Yo guys, I've got a spark which I'm going to use to ignite the fire for a brand new ranking video here on the channel. Now what you can see before you are the 45 reposed Skylanders throughout the entire history of the franchise. Now when I say repos, I don't mean Eon's Elites, I don't mean Light Cores, I don't even mean the supercharged revamped versions. We're talking about Series 2, 3, and in Gilbert's case, Series 4. And I'm here today to rank every single one of them, and it's only appropriate too because it was just a few weeks back that I was doing an entire lock and swap force orientated around the 16 reposes that came from that game specifically. So yes, we're going to be not only ranking for 16 swap force reposes, but the 24 Giants reposes and the 5 Trap Team reposes as well. All of those numbers add up to 45 reposes for us to rank today, which are based on not only the design itself, not only how well that design of Repose expands upon the original design of Skylander, but also their WoW pals. Like, do the WoW pals encourage you to tackle new methods with playing as a Skylander? You know, do they increase the strategy behind them? Do they make their movesets flow much more? Well, I'm sure we'll find out, as I have a lot to talk about when it comes to me ranking all of these reposes from worst to best. So without further ado, let's roll the intro and get straight into it. And man, I sure hope you guys enjoy the awesomeness that is the ensemble of all of the reposes before you. I, for one, think they all look glorious ensembled in this manner.
You look different. New haircut? Nuh-uh.
Working out?
Nope.
Oh, bigger bar.
Yes, still gross.
Your favorite toys are back and better than ever in the all-new Skylanders Giants. Rated everyone 10 and up. Some toys and consoles sold separately.
Coming in at number 45, to no one's surprise, is going to be Series 2 Wrecking Ball. This repose does very little to expand upon the original design of Wrecking Ball. All they did was give him sharper teeth and a slightly different expression. There's very little you can do with a bowling ball that has eyes and legs and everything to begin with, so naturally it's such a shame that they chose this design over Voodoo, who had so many more potential repose works that they could have, explored, but instead we got not only a terrible figurine, but on top of that a WoW power that just isn't all that great. Sure, you can combine it with the Wrecking Ball path to create one really powerful disco ball that does look really cool in all honesty, but outside of that it's just not very good. It's not the most memorable either, and I hate this character. I hate him so much, so to see this Series 2 chosen over much better, superior characters to him, it's just heartbreaking to me. Hence why Wrecking Ball, his Series 2 version more specifically, gets 45 on the list right here. Now number 44 is going to be Series 3 Eruptory. Similar problem to Wrecking Ball, to where he is simply just an orb with arms and legs. There's only limited ways in which he can be reposed, and the Series 3 Eruptor not only has a terrible name and terrible gimmick, mind you, because I hate the idea of him barfing up lava. It's kind of disgusting to me, to be honest with all of you, but on top of all that, it's just not that interesting enough design. What they did was reposition the arms ever so slightly, but the gesture, the expression, it really doesn't explore this character's design in ways that we haven't seen it before. There was no reason to give us a Series 3 Eruptor over far superior designs that we could have got, like a Series 3 Flameslinger or a Series 3 Igniter. Even a Series 2 Sunburn would have been better for Swap Force. So naturally, Series 3 Eruptor isn't very memorable. His WoW power, I can't even remember what the heck that is, so that's not going to help elevate the character. That's why he's number 44. The only reason why he's here above Wrecking Ball is because I like Eruptor more than Wrecking Ball. That's the simple base line for it. But for number 43, we have Series 2 Drill Sergeant. Yet again, another pose that isn't really all that expanded upon in comparison to the original Drill Sergeant. His drills just look a little bit more advanced and they're in a slightly different position, but apart from that, they don't really expand upon the design. And the WoW power, all he does is fire off a Mega Laser occasionally. It doesn't do that much to improve his gameplay and just ultimately make this a figurine worth getting if you already have the Series 1 version of the character. Now number 42 is Series 3 Stealth Elf. I like the fact that she turned into a tiger for her WoW power. It does create some good pacing for the character, so that's easily the best part about it. But outside of that, Series 3 Stealth Elf has a really boring Repose. She's just simply doing a hook kick and has a ninja suit. And not to mention the ninja suit, because it's all one colour, it takes away any sort of contrasting colours that you could regularly get out of Stealth Elf. So naturally they just took this character and reposed her in the most boring, unimaginable way possible, and the WoW power was really the only saving grace due to the pacing it adds. Now number 41 is going to be Series 2 Eruptory. Once again, I can't really remember the WoW power for this character because it's not all that memorable, so that's not going to help elevate it. But what does help out Series 2 Eruptory on the other hand is the fact that this is the first time we saw Eruptory repose. You know, it's not quite as disgusting to me personally as Lava Bath Eruptory. And on top of that, you know, it does a better job at expanding upon the original design, whereas Series 3 Eruptory is just, you know, lackluster because of the lack of ideas they had left for the character. Series 2 Eruptory is the first time we saw Repose, hence why I was able to successfully expand upon the design, really. We got to see spikes, we got to see a brand new expression, and really showed a different side to his character almost. So that's what makes Series 2 Eruptory a lot better than the Series 3 counterpart. Now for number 40, we have Series 2 Terrafin. I love his little spikes and his fists. It really does add to the whole danger and intimidation of the character, even though the pose itself is pretty dull. You know, he's a bit, you know, on his toes, he's bobbing up and down, and he's readying for a fight for sure, so that's what makes him so intimidating. But on top of that, it's not a great expand upon the original design, and Terrafin is just another one of those characters that I don't enjoy all that much. I would have more preferred a Series 2 Dynarang, so the fact that this character was chosen over other better characters to repose again is heartbreaking and gives Series 2 Terrafin number 40 on the list. Now number 39 is going to be Series 2 Cinder. For WoW power is really basic. All she does is summon a curse whilst in flight. It's not all that powerful, it's not all that inspired either. And the pose too, all they did was, you know, raise her wings up and give her just more of a heightened pose almost, just like Terrafin. Just make her look more intimidating, and she's definitely more attractive in terms of you wanting to play as her more with this pose than her original pose. But still, it's just really dull and lackluster in comparison to other reposes, and the WoW power doesn't improve upon that, hence why Series 2 Cinder is here at number 39. Now number 38 is going to be Series 2 Whirlwind. What they did with this was change up the colour of her horn and give her a slightly mildly different pose. It's just not really all that much to admire. Her WoW power is really forgettable and not all that useful. Like, seriously, it's bland and really uninspired. Just so much as a pose, so I suppose the two go very well together. I do like this character a lot more than previous characters mentioned, however, so I'm glad that they brought her back in Giants with this Series 2 formation, so therefore Series 2 Whirlwind gets number 38 on the list right here even, and her pose is just more dynamic. The fact that she has less feet on the base as well just makes her more fun texturally to pick up and play, really. Now 37 is going to be Series 2 Stealth Elf. Yet again, a really uninspired redesign. This time around we just have her kind of like running. It's one of her in-game animations, so they literally just took one of her animations from Spyro's Adventure and turned it into a pose, which is uninspired incarnate. Her WoW power is fine, she spins in 360 degrees and deals decent damage. And ultimately, this character still has the nice, sharp contrast that we see from the Series 1 counterpart, because of the fact that she doesn't have a blocky suit that's all black. So just a more interesting repose and a more interesting WoW power is what makes Series 2 Stealth Elf much more better than her ninja counterpart, even if she's not amongst my favourite characters in terms of her gameplay and everything, and the fact that her redesign does feel a little uninspired at points. But moving on to number 36, we have Series 2 Slam Man. Once again, a repose where all what they did was slightly reposition the, you know, positions of the arms. They don't really change up his expression to show a different side to his personality. And all he does for his WoW power is, rather than skating on ice to deal no damage whatsoever, now it's an ice sled which deals damage. And it is nice that it deals damage, you know, it makes his tertiary attack a little bit less of a waste. And it also has a nice jingle to it too, so that's pretty fun. It's not the greatest WoW power ever, but it's far more functional than other WoW powers so far on this list. So ultimately, Series 2 Slam Man just has a mildly more interesting pose and a much better WoW power, elevating him up to number 36 on the list even. Now number 35 is going to be Series 3 Terrafin. Now this time he has this huge golden gauntlets, which really reminds me of Wolverine's character, so that's really cool to see. I do admire the expansion upon the design that this Repose creates, and the wild power is really cool too. It really flows because you can press the tertiary attack button whilst in your earth burrow to spring up and kind of like surprise attack enemies. It's just a really fluent and nice animation that really makes his moves flow together and just ultimately increase the pace of his character. So a lot of the flaws I had with his character previously are improved upon with that wow power, making him easily one of the greatest reposes, but that's still only at 35 because once again this is just a character that I'm not all that interested in, and they could have done more than just change up his gauntlets really. Like they could have gave him a whole new colour palette and everything, but they didn't want to go that far in expanding the design, unfortunately. Now number 34 is going to be Series 2 Gilbert, and it's a pretty cool redesign. You know, he has this new harpoon gun and Jet Vac, which have sharp contrast and colours that are really nice to look at, and the fact that, you know, his Jet Vac has water that runs along to the base as well is very clever, but his wow power is really uninspired. All he does now is fire off 3 anchors at once. I never even use the anchor attack, so having 3 of them makes no difference to me. It's such a huge letdown, that Repose, so uninspired. But number 33 is going to be Series 2 Sprocket. Never thought Sprocket would make it this high, but ultimately seeing her in attack form is really, really cool. A great way to expand on her design. And for a real main problem with her Repose is the fact that the tank is really light and hollow. It's not that fun of a toy either because the textures just aren't really all that fun to rub your fingers along because the plastic is so light and so fragile. But that doesn't stop how cool the design looks. Wow power is great. Getting to have a mega laser whilst in your tank is very memorable too. Getting to cause all of this destruction as a character, even though I very rarely access her tank because it takes so bloody long. So it would have helped if wow power made those waiting times a little bit less. But still, it's a great expansion upon the original design. It's a great wow power, so it shows through. And despite my hatred of Sprocket as a character, she still managed to get a pretty high rank on this list because of it. And number 32 is going to be Series 3 Spyro. Yet again, not the most inspired pose, nor the most inspired wow power. At the end of a charge, he just lets off a little fire Spyro head, which is well animated. It does look cool, so I'm glad that on a visual scale, Series 3 Spyro is pretty great. But the figurine, you know, it's got really great texturing on the horns. That's by far the best part. You know, they really expanded upon that and gave Spyro all sorts of new expressions to really bring out a new side to his personality. But apart from that, for redesign, they just kind of like changed up how many legs were on the base and the whole formation of the wings and everything. So it's not the greatest design expansion we've seen between an original and a Repose. And the wow pow, you know, whilst it looks cool, it isn't really that effective in combat. So ultimately that gives Series 3 Spyro the number 32 spot on the list. Now for numbers 31 even, I have Series 2 Sook. It's so cool to finally see one of his bazooka shells outside of his bazooka. You get to see it up close and personal, and the details for it are fantastic. So yes, the character definitely looks the part. The Repose for change of enemy expression really expands upon the original design and showcases why Zook deserved this Series 2 form. But his wow power is really lame. Like, seriously, they couldn't come up with something better than that. So ultimately, gameplay wise, for wow power doesn't add anything. It doesn't make his attacks flow any better. So ultimately, for design alone and for change up and the expansion upon the design which this Repose ultimately creates isn't enough to elevate it further up the list right here, unlike Series 2 Chop Chop, which is a design that kind of buffs me a little bit for the 30th spot because it's one of the only designs in Skylanders where his shield is from the shield path when that's fully upgraded, and the sword is from the sword path when that's fully upgraded. So you cannot create a vision of Chop Chop in the game that matches the figurine 100% because of the fact that either one of his weapons are from either one of his paths, so you can only replicate one of those things within the game. And the fact that, you know, you can't have the figurine and the game counterpart look the exact same, it just bothers me, is what I'm getting down to right here. That's the basics for it. And the wow power is only really great when you use the shield path, because that way you can have the Mega Bash that deals stupid damage, as well as, of course, you know, the increased durability of the shield. but that comes at the cost of not having the sword path, which is the superior path by miles. You no longer have combos, you no longer have a sword on fire, for Pete's sake. So the fact that this figurine cannot be translated 100% into the game is frustrating, even though it is unique, and that is what has ultimately elevated Series 2 Chop Chop, just how cool this design looks due to the fact that it cannot be replicated in game, the whole uniqueness behind that aesthetic, and the fact that the WoW power isn't really all that great unless you choose a path that really hinders the rest of the character, is ultimately the main letdown for Series 2 Chop Chop, hence why it's number 13 on this right here. And number 29 is going to be Series 3 Gilbert. We get a new suit and a new gun for this Repose, so it's definitely a cool one. It really expands upon the original design because we get to see this all new weaponry and this all new suit coming from Gilbert. But the WoW power again is really lackluster, so I love Gilbert, he's a really good character. But unfortunately his Reposes just don't expand upon the design, and they aren't interested in WoW powers to make it so you don't really have any reason to pick up Series 2 or Series 3 Gilbert, considering that you already have the Series 1 Gilbert from the starter pack of Spyro's Adventure. So yeah, it's really annoying that they took a really iconic character such as this one and just didn't do a great job expanding upon it, really. Now for number 28 we have Series 2 Jet Vac, a character I'm not the biggest fan of since he literally sucks. Now that's one of his abilities. But the new suit is really cool, the new weapon is really cool. So above all, it's just a really cool pose, there's no denying it, even though the WoW power is really unmemorable. Like seriously, I could not tell you what the heck this WoW power does just because it doesn't really stick with you. So the lack of memorability of the character is once again a huge hindrance, and it means Series 2 Jet Vac can't really elevate himself above 28. It's a shame really that a character whose gameplay isn't as great as characters like Gilbert or Chop Chop still winds up getting above them just because this design, this Repose does a greater job of expanding upon Jet Vac, you know, gives him more personality behind his figurine, and just makes this Repose worth making because it has its differences from the original iteration of the character. Now for number 27 we have Series 3 Terrafin. He has a rocket, that's pretty cool, but just like Sprocket, it's hollow and uninspired it feels like. You know, where did this rocket come from? It takes Terrafin in a direction that we've never seen before, so this coming out of nowhere is a bit of a nuisance. For WoW power isn't all that memorable either. Like, sure, it does exactly what's on the figurine, it gives Terrafin a rocket to blast off with, but ultimately it's just not as useful or efficient as his other WoW power from a Series 2 iteration, which we will get to later. And it just makes this figurine not the greatest due to the hollowness, again the same flaw as with Series 2 Sprocket, and ultimately it just doesn't do a great job of expandable design in ways that I would have liked to have seen. But moving on to 26 we have Series 2 Chill. Now if this character has upgraded weaponry, you have more details implanted into her shield which look glorious, so from an aesthetic level this is a really great Repose. You know, it does a great job making Chill look more intimidating, and it really expands upon her design to give her a more expressive look. And the WoW power is great, being able to summon narwhals within your ice walls is really effective, and it's one of the WoW powers that I use most frequently. So naturally that makes Series 2 Chill an absolute highlight from a Swap Force lineup, even if there feels as though there are fewer changes between her Series 1 counterpart and her Blizzard counterpart from Swap Force than what I would have liked. So comparatively she doesn't live up to other Reposes, especially since her character in and of itself is not as great as characters like Series 2 Flameslinger coming in at number 25, whose design is fine. I mean, you have him with triple arrows now, which looks damn cool from a aesthetic level, but it doesn't do a great job expanding upon the original design besides just giving him more arrows to work with. But who cares when you have a WoW power that makes the character more fast-paced and fluent in combat, because you have that second fire dash within his fire spirit, fire sprint even. I said spirit accidentally then. Anyways, that's a great WoW power, especially for speedrunning. And who wouldn't want to see a return of this design? Like, just getting to see this design again and with triple arrows that looks as cool as it is a nice concept, and I'm happy that it exists, hence why Series 2 Flameslinger was here at number 25. But number 24 is going to be Series 3 Whirlwind. Finally we get to see a completely, you know, recreated look for this character. Again, this armor feels as though it came out of nowhere because we never saw this armor previously, but this armor just feels more fitting for Whirlwind. You know, it's not like a Rocket Series 3 Terrafin, which feels like it was pulled out of nowhere. No, this is just incredibly appropriate for the character, and on top of that, you know, she actually has a story element within Swap Force, so Horn Blast Whirlwind feels more necessary because of that, because there's a story scroll and would keep referencing this character directly. So because of that, you feel like there had to be at least one iteration of Whirlwind found within this game, and you get that with Horn Blast Whirlwind. So above all, it's a really great expansion upon the design, and for armor feels as though it came from somewhere, it's fitting. For WoW Power is better than the Series 2, I can say that much for it at least. So therefore, Series 3 Whirlwind is here at number 24. Oh, number 23, at long last, it's going to be Series 2 Pop Fizz. How could you not want to see a massive potion on the repost of this guy? Like, sure, what they did was give him a massive potion, which can feel rather uninspired, but hey, he has no expression too, he has a thumbs up, he's smiling, you know, it adds a lot of personality to the character. And the Wow Wow too is epic, just having a giant purple bottle buddy, which is quite a mouthful, but regardless of all that, is really efficient. And it really encourages you to swap up Pop Fizz's potions a whole lot more and adds that extra layer of depth to his gameplay, because you want the chance for that massive potion of his, because it's so useful and just so expressive with its cute little animations and everything. Series 2 Pop Fizz looks cool, it's nice to handle, even with the hollow kind of texturing. You know, that's a problem with many Swap Force repos, is the fact that they just feel hollow, and that's not the greatest texturing that they could have gone with. But it doesn't take away from how awesome a massive potion looks and just how attracted you are to this design, because you can't find yourself wanting to do anything but take advantage of that massive potion of his. Now, number 22 is going to be Series 2 Sonic Boom. Getting to see her babies on the base is so cool and so necessary as well. It reinforces the message of Sonic Boom fighting crime as a family. It's really cool. It has a lot of detail to it as well, since Sonic Boom's design in and of itself, you know, the posing of it makes her look more intimidating, and her babies just have such expressive faces to them. They are so ready for combat. It's so cute. And so deserving too. Like, we needed this pose just to reinforce what Sonic Boom's character was about, and to ultimately give her this physical manifestation of her ideals and her personality. So yeah, Series 2 Sonic Boom was great, even if the WoW Power's not, because all it does really is make a super baby. Yeah, rather uninspired that. There was so many greater things that they could have done with Series 2 Sonic Boom besides making her a massive baby for her WoW Power. But unfortunately, that's not what we got. Now, number 21 is going to be Series 3 Cinder, one of the finest figurines of this ranking list so far. The plastics used to make her look translucent are really, really cool. And getting to see lightning symbols on her wings is very aesthetically pleasing and very clever. Unfortunately, the WoW Power isn't the greatest. You just get a skull that explodes, but unfortunately this locks you in this animation for far too long, which means you can't attack enemies in other methods like with her lightning attacks, and the explosion does very little knockback damage, so most of the time enemies are going to be able to very easily hit you once you come out of it. So yes, it's not the greatest WoW Power, but that's more than made up for with how incredible the physical figurine is and how well this expands upon the original design, which is exactly what Repose should do, and you know, it really justifies this figurine existing. But moving on to number 20, we have Series 2 Hex. Not the greatest pose, you know, what they did was have her raising up a undead, like, skull orb, and then you had literal skulls orbiting her as well. It's interesting texturally because it's so smooth to rub your hands along her skull orbs. But apart from that, it's a rather dull and uninspired repose even. But fortunately, that's more than made up for with the risk and reward of her WoW Power, because the skull does so much damage, but it only does damage when facing enemies and it spins, so the chances of it even attacking enemies is slim, and so you're risking getting rid of the Skull Rain in favour of this powerful attack that might not even land. The risk and reward of that WoW Power ultimately makes you more immersed in Series 2 Hex's gameplay, and it really improves the character tenfold. So the WoW Power alone really elevates Hex on this list right here, more specifically her Series 2 counterpart. But as for number 19, we have Series 2 Spyro. It's really cool to see his wings really expanded upon with the little diamonds towards the top of them. And the WoW Power is cool, you know, the fact that before you perform your Earth Pound you get to fire off 2 fireballs is greater for crowd control, and it just really motivates you to take advantage of that Earth Pound more, because there's less risk involved now that you're guaranteed to hit enemies with the fireballs at least, so the cooldown of the attack now becomes worth it. because you're at least going to attack some enemies in the process and leave yourself less vulnerable because of it. Now, coming in at number 18, we have Series 2 Hot Dog. I love the fact that, you know, he's a dog. So what he needed was a bone, expanded upon his design in the perfect way possible to make him look more cuter, and just really take advantage of the creature that he took advantage of for Hot Dog's design. So with all its opposed, it really makes sense, it's fun, it's cute, it's really attractive, because how could you not want to play as a character that looks this way? So Series 2 Hot Dog is a figurine that I really like. His Wow Pow is, again, it's fine, it's not the most memorable, but it does its job pretty well and being effective in combat and everything. So I really enjoy playing as this Repose, and it deservedly gets number 18 on the ranking here. But number 17 goes to Series 2 Lightning Rod. Now, we have two entire, lightning rods he holds in his hand here. It really takes advantage of the power scales of this character. You know, you get to see more of just how powerful he is. His expression really does take advantage of his personality and the kind of arrogance behind it all. And the Wow Power is really useful too. The fact that you can create just this gush of lightning is really powerful, it's really controllable, and it just adds that further layer of depth to the gameplay, because again, just like Series 2 Hex, it has that risk and reward type feeling to it. So it's a good Repose. It expands upon the original design, it makes him look more powerful and more expressive, and he has an amazing Wow Power to boot, so that's definitely deserving of number 17 spot. But as a number 16, we have Prison Break. Now what I love about this is that it really stands out from his other counterparts because he's red. The red crystals just create such a sharp contrast, and on top of that, the Wow Power has such a sheer attention to detail. So you kind of forgive the fact even that it's much weaker in the game than what other Wow Powers are. So sure, the actual efficiency of a Wow Power itself isn't all that great, but the attention to detail most certainly is, because he carves himself in his prisms with a red laser, for crying out loud. That is so cool. It does a great job expanding upon the original design, this one, and I'm so glad Series 3 Prison Break exists for that very reason. Now, number 15 is Series 2 Stump Smash, easily one of the most uninspired reposes, because all they did was change up his little mallets that he has for hands. You know, now they have more spikes to him, and of course he also has his thorns from his armor that you get via his upgrades. But he does look more intimidating with this pose. He looks more ready to pulverize his enemies, so I'm glad that they definitely lean in more to his gameplay style with this figurine. And above all, his Wow Power is just so phenomenal, especially when you combine it with the Acorns path. It means that you can just spit out a sprue of Acorns from a distance, so enemies aren't even going to be able to get close to you because of how effective this is at killing them off from a distance. So seriously, Stump Smash just has a really flowing moveset, and the Wow Power takes full advantage of said moveset to really help it flow and really expand upon this gameplay to make it worth picking up Series 2 Stump Smash, so you can have a better time with this character through how much this Wow Power improves upon his gameplay. Now, number 14 on the other hand is going to be Series 2 Frino. That bike was so damn cool. I'm so glad we got to see it manifested physically into a Repose. So this Repose even does a great job expanding upon the original design. We get to see an awesome Wow Power because he spins around and fires off fireballs everywhere. It looks incredibly awesome. So we have a Wow Power that's both effective, looks cool, and the figurine is no different. So yes, Series 2 Frino, fast paced and fun, but they could have also done more than just give us a bike. You know, they could have gave us more armor for Frino himself. And ultimately, the only reason this design does exist is because of a bike. Not that I'm moaning about it, mind you, but still, you know, it feels obvious, and they could have done more of it, really, so that's why it's at number 14. But number 13 is going to be Series 2 Trick Happy. I told you earlier that I was going to mention about why this Wow Power is so much more better than Big Bang Trigger Happy's counterpart, and that's because the Yamato Blast with Series 1 Trick Happy is so cool. It's the main reason why you even want to pick the gun path, because it's very powerful, it looks incredibly cool, and it's chaotic too, so how could you not love the idea of harvesting that chaos for yourself? And Series 2 Trigger Happy has that ability at his disposal whenever he pleases. He can just bring out his machine gun and fire off Yamato Blast without needing to charge them up. It's effective, it looks so damn cool. How can you not love this Wow Power? And just getting to see a machine gun on a figurine, man, that is aesthetically pleasing, and it makes Series 2 Trick Happy a phenomenal repost for it. Now, coming in at number 12, our top dozen to kick it off is going to be none other than Series 3 Chop Chop. Getting to see Chop Chop with twin blades is a really great way to expand upon the design, taking away his shield instead. And sure, the swords could have looked a little more different in that of for Series 1 counterpart. You know, he could have done a better job expanding upon the literal look of the swords, but who cares, because it still looks cool. It's a very expressive design, you know, it really, once again, looks into Chop Chop's almost arrogance in combat, and his wow power too is incredibly overpowering. You can charge the move, walk forward, and then just unleash hell with your twin swords. It's so cool. It's very well animated too, with the way how he swings them being rather quite realistic actually. So yes, he's fun, it's an excellent design, and it makes Series 2, Series 3 Chop Chop even worthy of kicking off our top dozen here on the ranking list. Now number 11 is going to be Series 3 Pop Fizz. Now when I first got to play as Pop Fizz, getting to harness his beast mode and the chaos that created, it was so much fun. So I was naturally incredibly excited when we got to see a design for Series 3 Pop Fizz where the figurine itself was his beast mode. It expands upon his design and it gives us something that we needed to see. We needed to see him in his alternate form. It was a perfect repose. They take advantage of what is a perfect repose. I couldn't blame them for taking advantage of this repose, and it lives up to everything I wanted it to be. The wow power is awesome. The figurine is expressive. You know, you truly see that sense of power that the beast mode of Pop Fizz creates from the expression of the figurine alone. I do wish the beast was a little bit taller, like halfway between a core size and a giant size, rather than it just being purely a core size. But I'm still happy with how it is, and that leads us on to our top 10 with Series 3 Jet Vac. Yet again, you never expect Jet Vac to reach this high up, but there's no denying how good the wow power is. First of all, not only do you get the increased speed of his dual wielding vacuum guns, which deal huge damage, but they also explode afterwards, causing huge knockback and huge area damage, so you get two awesome abilities in one, and on top of that, seeing the double vacuum blasters on the figurine and the red suit is just such a great expansion upon the original Jet Vac, which shows just such a huge difference between his first iteration and his Series 3 iteration. It just made it so worth bringing this figurine to life because it looks so damn cool and it's a figurine just worth collecting. Now number 9 is going to be Series 2 Bash, because his wow power makes his moves flow together very nicely and makes him even more a fast-paced character. Something that I didn't even know I needed, because Bash is fast-paced as is. Now the design isn't anything to really write home about in terms of how it expands upon the original Bash design. Like, sure, we get his armor, which looks really aesthetically pleasing, but outside of that, you know, it's not really that much of a different expression from that which we've seen before. But the wow power more than makes up for that. And speaking of great wow powers, we have Series 2 Zap, which once again, his wow power flows in with his other moves and just makes him such a combo heavy character now, and it's so much fun to take advantage of all of this chaos and everything and just make the moves flow together for a more fast-paced and fulfilling moveset. And his design is really cool as well, just getting the expanded like machine and different pose that's just more intimidating in as he has his head a lot more tilted. And going back to wow power, the fact that it's named after Riley, and this was Riley's favourite figurine, so this was for developers, you know, honouring him. It's just so heartwarming to read upon that story. And so the fact that the developers went through this ordeal to make Series 2 Zap as amazing as he is just so powerful to me, and it really does showcase the magic of Skylanders, and that's what gives Zap the deserved 8th place on the ranking list right here. But number 7 is going to be Series 2 Shroom Boom. I'm so glad that we got to see him in his self-slingshot form. Again, this is just a repose that must have came naturally to the developers. It was just too perfect to explore, to not include, which does make it flawed for the same reason as Hogwild Frino. But really, who cares when you have a wow power that's fun? Like, sure, it's not the most effective, you know, it takes forever to charge up, but the fact that you can bob between little mushrooms to make Shroom Boom into this like pinball machine, it's so much fun. The sound effects on top of that are really synchronized to really add to the fun of the move. And not to mention, if you use it perfectly, like with Risk, you get the reward of dealing huge damage to enemies with knockback and huge, and I mean huge, amounts of damage. So how great for Repose is, how great for Wow Power is, you know, just for raw fun you have with this character, makes Series 2 Shrimberon absolutely deserving 7th place. But as for number 6, we have Series 2 Camo. Now, this character's on 2 legs, which is really unique because most dragons are on 4 legs, so getting to see that is really, really cool. And not to mention, it brings about the contrast and colours of Camo much more, because you get to see more of his legs now, because his legs are red, unlike the rest of the figurine, which is green, so that's sharp in terms of its colour contrasting. The texturing too, the thorns on running along his horns to make him fawn horn Camo. It's so cool to play about within your hands, so the texture of this character is phenomenal, and the wow power, my god, it flows with all of his other moves, and it just overwhelms enemies even with explosive pumpkins that are so effective in combat. How can you not want to play with Series 2 Camo, considering just how much power he possesses? It's by far one of the best wow powers in the game. It's fun too, it flows, it feels just, and it just expands upon the original Camo design in such unique and creative ways to make it such a perfect character for the number 6 slot right here. But now moving into the top 5, these were so hard to place because all 5 of these Reposes are the finest examples of what make Reposes and Skylanders so grand, I would go as far to saying. And that's going to be kicked off with Series 2 Drobot, a design which, as I hold before me and as the gameplay is shown beside me, like, seriously, this figurine is so good that of course I will take advantage of great gameplay for all of you to watch as I rank these figurines. But regardless of all that, yes, this character deserves to have the gameplay being showcased, because Drobot, as is really fun. He's really overpowered, so being able to harness that chaos for yourself is just beyond satisfying. And some of that is wow power, it flows, you can create a super gear, and then after you're done dealing damage to an enemy with a super gear, you can bring it back and then unleash his regular gears to deal the next entire wave of damage to them. So enemies aren't even defeated by the power of your lasers because the gear works so well. And not to mention, Repose is by far one of the most clever we've ever seen from Skylanders, because every part plays into each other to make the character just feel so uniform and cool aesthetically, because of course you have the massive gear that's held up by the wings, then his tail goes through the middle of the gear, and his horn on his head is, you know, allowing him to put his chin tilted up as his horn goes through one of the gaps of the gears. It's just such a uniform design that brings together all of the different elements of the design to just ultimately make it really clever and a great expansion upon the original design that we've seen. This is a pose that is unlike his original pose, to the point where it's unrecognisable. The only thing he could have done to have made this better is perhaps give Drobot a new suit colour. Like, imagine all of the blues becoming blacks. That would have been so cool. And yet still, I think 5 is the perfect spot for Series 2 Drobot right here, because for number 4, we actually have the only Series 4 in Skylanders history. Series 4 Gilbert. Yes, this is 4th section for 4th spot for 4th Series 4. Now, Series 4 Gilbert is awesome, so much more so than Series 2 and Series 3 Gilbert, because unlike those designs, this really expands upon Gilgerant's figurine. We get to see a water serpent. What from that does not imply absolute awesomeness? It makes the wow power really destructive and powerful, something that you want to take advantage of. And the figurine itself is just something you want to pick up and play with because of just the natural awesomeness of a sea serpent. And the fact that we have that sea serpent, rather than just seeing another bland Gilgerant with another bland weapon, is so great. Like, seriously, it justifies the Series 4 Gilgerant. I wish we got this Gilgerant even earlier, because it was just so cool to see. And naturally, very deserving of number 4 spot is Series 4 Gilgerant, with a Repose as good as it is even, and a wow power as good as it is. But that's still not as good as number 3, which is going to be Series 2 Double Trouble, a design that has the same strengths as Series 2 Sonic Boom, because you get to see his doubles, which are really well detailed, and it just adds a lot of personality to the character, as it's his doubles that he is focusing on. You know, we see him looking towards his doubles, and so that creates a connection, a relationship. It shows why they are so close to one another on the base. The base becomes symbolic now, And now his staff is also V-Hacks, which makes him incredibly intimidating on top of all that. So yes, the Repose is phenomenal. But that doesn't even begin to cover the surface of what makes this such a great Series 2, because the WoW power is so damn stupid broken, especially when you combine it with the doubles path, which is what's encouraged from the figurine itself, because the doubles are on that figurine itself. What you have here is a beam that splits. So all of a sudden, you're defeating 3 enemies at once from a split beam. All 3 of those enemies are creating doubles. Now your beam is splitting, growing up those doubles, making them deal even more damage. So next thing you know, enemies are defeated from both the doubles and the split beam, and it just creates this constant cycle of defeating enemies, creating doubles, and making them cause huge damage from the beam, powering them up constantly. It's just such a chaotic cycle of events that gives you such great satisfaction, knowing that you're the one causing such destruction and annihilation of your enemies. Speaking of destruction and annihilation, we have at number 2, Series 2 Prison Break. What you can do here is that you can not only refract your beam 9 times over, but you can send down your beam a mega laser that deals huge chunks of damage. So all of a sudden, there's 9 enemies in front of you, and you deal them all in you deal with them all even in one fell swoop with that mega laser refracted 9 times. There's no other characters that can deal with multiple characters like this with absolute ease. Not to mention, the moveset encourages your investment, as it requires strategy and knowledge of angles. So just the fact that you remain fully immersed in this character's gameplay thoroughly throughout, and for just sheer destruction and chaos it can cause, makes the WoW power fantastic. There's no denying it. And what you also can't deny is how incredible this Repose is. First of all, you get to see him in a position where he's roaring towards his enemies. It's really intimidating, and it's just packed with detail. You see a crystal backpack, you see crystals exploding out of the base from his crystalline explosion. It takes basically everything that's great about Prison Break and puts it all into a singular pose that looks so cool. It's a pose you want to play with because it's intimidating, and on top of that you have the WoW power that's dealing with 9 enemies at once, and all 9 of those enemies that are defeated all at once create crystals for you to further refract your lasers. It's such a destructive chain of events. How can you do anything but love Series 2 Prison Break? And now that means we get to move on to Series 2 Igniter, which is obviously number 1 on the list. Like, that was the most predictable thing. If you clicked on this video not expecting Series 1 Igniter to be number 1 on the list, or Series 2 Igniter even, then, you know, bad call on your behalf, because Series 2 Igniter is just sheer and utter perfection. He's my favourite Skylander by miles, and this pose proves why I have so much love behind this character. First of all, his pose, he looks victorious, he looks noble. It takes advantage of his personality, and the fact that they're able to convey his personality without a facial expression because he has no face. First of all, that is really unique in and of itself that he has no face, and second of all, that personality being brought about for that alone just shows how phenomenal the character design itself is. We get to see an axe on fire. That is so cool, and his turtle shell is so great for expanding upon the original design of Igniter. So this has everything that goes into making a Series 2 perfect, with the expansion upon the original design and the sheer details to it too, like the embodiments within his armor from that turtle shell look so cool. The texturines, the textures even, not the texturines, I have no idea what texturine is. I'm just so excited to talk about this character that I can barely even talk about my excitement for this character. But now, whilst I continue to struggle to contain my excitement talking about Series 2 Igniter here, what just makes this pose so great is just, you know, the victoriousness behind it. The fact that you want to play with this character because he's looking victorious, he's looking intimidating. How can you not want to play with a character who has already solidified victory for you? Before you even put him in the portal, you've already won. And the WoW power too, my god, it increases your motivation to actually use his Fire Spirit. What was arguably the worst part about Series 1 Igniter before is no longer a problem, because now whenever you use your Fire Spirit, sorry for stuttering right there, you leave behind a trail of blue fire. You can do loops of your Fire Spirit around enemies, deal damage for the Fire Spirit itself, and then once your Fire Spirit returns to your body, there's just a pool of blue fire that's dealing constant damage to enemies, and then you can go in, engage them with your melee attacks, and deal dumb stupid damage. We're talking about 40 damage per hit if we're talking about SS Super Saiyan Giants. That is so dumb stupid broken. The attacks really flow together to make this character even more efficient in combat and really reward your strategy, so you have the same immersion within the gameplay for this character as you do for Series 2 Prison Break. This figurine is a physical manifestation of pure perfection. I love Series 2 Igniter. You know, I'm definitely incredibly predictable, because those of you who know me well enough knew this was coming. You saw it coming from a mile away. And, you know, I'm glad that those of you who saw this coming and you were able to predict me so easily, I'm so glad you guys know me and you know my love behind this character. But now, if that all being said and done, this video is coming to an end. Series 2 Igniter is the best Ghana ever, but I hope you enjoyed the Series 2 Drobot gameplay. And until the next video arises, peace.